When he was 13, his father died. My mother took Sen Ning to the Yanjia. She had never been there, but I heard that there was a fiancé's Yanjia living in it. To be honest, Sen Ning is still young. She doesn't know the 3 words fiancé deeply. She only knows that it is someone who has never met her but should treat her well. Time passed one by one, and at 4:20 in the afternoon, the long black car stopped at a gate where the sentry stood. Sen Ning sat in the back row respectfully, and only glanced out the window when he realized that he had arrived at the destination. Everything in front of her is unfamiliar: buildings, roads, cars, and even the people who kindly opened the door to her. All of these are outside of her cognition. Sen Ning's hands are tight, and she can feel it. My palm was sweating slightly. "Mrs. Wei, here." The man who opened the door from the co-pilot said to Wei Pinfang. Sen Ning turned to look at his mother, who nodded to the people outside, and then whispered to Sen Ning, "What are you doing? Get out of the car." Sen Ning pursed her lips and hesitated, but under her mother's dissatisfied gaze, she got out of the car obediently. The man in the passenger seat led the 2 of them to the door. Sen Ning seemed to follow him obediently, but those eyes kept looking around secretly. Everything here seems to be a scene that will only appear in TV dramas. Young men in military uniforms are rarely seen standing at the gate, motionless, as if they are seen as air. After entering the gate, there is an open Linlang avenue, on both sides of which are planted big trees that she still can't name. The trunks are straight and regular, while the leaves are crossing each other, forming a piece of shade. Turning right after walking out of this avenue, the field of vision suddenly widened, and there was a large open space here. On the open ground, there is also a small square array. They are wearing the same training clothes, doing neat and uniform movements. Sen Ning was a little dumbfounded. All of them were tall and strong, and when they shouted slogans, they could make her heart tremble. "What are you looking at? Come here quickly." Unconsciously, he stopped, and Wei Pinfang saw that she didn't move and turned around and pulled her. Sen Ning turned her head, somewhat puzzled. "What are they doing?" "Wei Pinfang, what did you tell you at home last night? Let you be obedient, don't ask questions." Sen Ning pursed her lips and bowed her head. "They are training." The man leading the way saw this and answered her with a smile, "This is very common. We also train recruits in our yard. This gang enlisted in the army this year." After answering, continue to move forward. Sen Ning was a little curious about such a scene, and couldn't help but look back, so the little person pulled a distance away. Pounding at this moment, there were several sounds of the ball hitting the ground not far away. When Sen Ning's gaze moved from the square, the ball just stopped bouncing and rolled in front of her leisurely. "Where's the basketball?" Before Sen Ning could raise her head, there was already a cold voice in front of her. "Child, kick the ball over." The voice is slightly low, like a turbulent spring in the deep mountains and dense forests, with endless waves on the surface, but when it falls on the eardrum, it makes people feel the mysterious and precious inside. Sen Ning slowly raised his head to look at the person who spoke not far away. The person looked about 17 or 18 years old. He was wearing a white sportswear with a pair of white and blue sneakers on his feet. Exquisite, especially outstanding. At this moment, he looked at her without waves, his thick black eyelashes were hanging slightly, and he didn't say anything, but Sen Ning gave birth to a kind of invisible pressure. She squeezed her palms, panicked and kicked. "But I don't know if it's too nervous." This foot only wiped the side of the ball, and the basketball slowly rolled forward and stopped again. Puff! The little girl's strength is so small. A boy in black sportswear trot forward behind that person. He bent down and picked up the basketball on the ground, and said to the man who led Sen Ning in the door, "Old Gao, did you bring this little girl?" "Who, relative?" Lao Gao walked back to the edge of Sen Ning, and said politely, "Not a relative, but a guest invited by the old man." As soon as these words came out, the boys playing on the court looked at Sen Ning in surprise, and even the cold-spoken person before turned his gaze on her. Sen Ning has always been timid, and her face was blushing when the teacher called her up to answer questions, not to mention the fact that so many boys suddenly looked at her. She moved behind Lao Gao subconsciously, and looked at Wei Pinfang a few steps away in a panic. Guest of the head of speech? Damn, you have such a great face. He turned his head and said, Brother Yan, you know him. Brother Yan. What is the last name? Sen Ning was stunned for a moment, and looked up at the cold-faced boy who had just asked her to pick up the ball. I don't know. The man frowned slightly and looked at Lao Gao. He didn't say anything, but only one look, but Lao Gao responded to what he meant and immediately explained respectfully, it's from the Sen family, this little girl is called, Sen Ning. What? The words and deeds paused, and he lowered his eyes again to look at Sen Ning. This time, there was obvious surprise in his cold eyes. You say, this kid? I'm not, kid. Sen Ning replied boldly somehow, although she stumbled, it didn't sound like a deterrent. The boy behind his words and deeds dribbled the ball while curious, the basketball hit the ground with a pounding sound, just like Sen Ning's heart. She thinks he knows who he is, Lao Gao explained to him this way, and his surname is Yan, then, he does what he says and does. This was different from what she had imagined. Grandpa actually mentioned this person when he was alive, whether it was a joke or a serious one, in short, she would vaguely know that her words and deeds are different to her. Since childhood, she has received too little love and care, so in her mind she would imagine the kind of gentle and easygoing person who would smile and treat her well. But now looking up at him, the little thought in Sen Ning's heart disappeared cleanly on her own. The person in front of him had cold eyes, like the lonely moon on a mountain, and the only firelight in the depths of the night. He looked at her with a cold and distant expression, as if she was just an uninvited guest who didn't know where she came from. Isn't it a kid? His words and deeds raised his brows slightly, and he seemed to think that what she said was a little funny, but he didn't continue to talk to her, just said, Old Gao, take the guests to Grandpa's place. Lao Gao, why don't you just stop playing and come back? Without answering his words and deeds, he turned around and took the ball from the boy in the black sportswear. He stepped forward, jumped, dunked, and the ball fell into the basket steadily, all in one go. Lao Gao also knew the temperament of his ancestor, so he didn't urge him to see this, but said to Sen Ning and Wei Pinfang, let's go ahead and wait at home. Okay. Wei Pinfang walked over and took Sen Ning's hand, and asked Lao Gao in a low voice, excuse me, was that kid just now? Lao Gao glanced at her and knew what she was asking, so he nodded and said, yes, he is the grandson of the word, and he does what he says. Sen Ning walked far away, looking back at their backs, her eyes deep. Someone at the side asked, Brother Yan, what is the Sen family, where is it? Before he could answer his words and deeds, his friend Xin Zequan put one hand on his shoulder and said meaningfully, I remember your grandfather said that you have a fiancé, Sai. Sen's house? It's not the legend, where your fiancé is. Sen's house. Tang Zheng, who is one of his friends in black sportswear, who is one of his best friends with words and deeds, his eyes widened, fucking trough is real, Brother Yan, you poisonous elementary school student. One of the words and deeds kicked on Tang Zheng's calf, go away. Is it okay? Is this illegal? Tang Zheng retired behind others, covering his mouth exaggeratedly, just the little kid? Honestly, I don't think this is very good. How can this girl be so young? Ha 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 ha, the boys on the court all laughed, their words and deeds reached the back of the molars, and an inexplicable smile appeared, you want this? Are you perverted? Tang Zheng said happily, don't dare, so what? Or go back first, after all, there is a little wife at home. That kid really couldn't get along with any little wife. However, there is always no bottom line when making jokes among boys at the age of 17 or 18. He glanced at Tang Zhang lightly, and the latter was so frightened that he hid behind others. Go back first, fight tomorrow. In the end, he left first. Of course, it didn't matter to Sen Ning, it was just tired of fighting. When Sen Ning followed the two elders into the villa, he still had words and deeds in his mind. The indifferent look in his eyes and the strange questioning, all made her still a little hopeful. For the first time, Sen Ning, who has not been deeply involved in the world, felt that some people looked very close, but they were actually people in another world far away from you. This is Lao Sen's granddaughter. Yan Guofeng looked at Sen Ning with some emotion. Good boy, come to grandpa's side, let grandpa take a look. Sen Ning glanced at Wei Pinfang, who nodded and motioned for her to walk over. So Sen Ning got up cautiously and sat next to Yan Guofeng. Yan Guofeng stretched out and took her hand, his eyes were a little red. It's a pity, Lao Sen can't see you grow up. Speaking of her grandfather who passed away, Sen Ning was also a little uncomfortable. She sniffed, and a little bit wanted to cry. Yan Guofeng patted the back of her hand. Tisk, this kid is also in the first year of junior high school. Wei Pinfang nodded and said in a low voice, yes, I just entered the first year of junior high this year. The granddaughter of the old Zhang family is also on the first grade, but she looks much taller than Sen Ning. How can this child look so young? Yan Guofeng is actually still speaking euphemistically. Sen Ning not only looks small, but is also obviously malnourished. A 13-year-old child is at least half a head shorter than her peers, and she looks extremely thin, and her skin is abnormally yellow. Hey! I also blame me, I can't give her a good life. Wei Pinfang choked up as he said. Yan Guofeng frowned, don't blame you, blame me, I should understand your situation sooner, and pick up this kid sooner, I'm really sorry for my old friend. Don't you say that. Click the sound of the paper bag being torn apart. Sen Ning heard the prestige from this sad atmosphere, and saw that at the door, he raised his head slightly in words and deeds, and walked inward while drinking the milk in his hand. He stands tall, walks with wind, and is out of step with the miserable state of the house. Okay, come here, Yan Guofeng stopped him at this moment, this is Sen Ning, and you must take good care of it from now on. The author has something to say, good luck. Send 300 red packets spicy. It's the first time to write a small female protagonist, a new attempt. Thank you all for your support, after that, it will be updated at 12 o'clock noon. Sen Ning's grandfather used to be a war correspondent. In the era when Yan Guofeng was a soldier, the two had a lifelong friendship on the battlefield, and perhaps they had to make an agreement to become in-laws. But just verbally, after that, Yan Guofeng went farther and farther in the military and politics, and when his position got higher and higher, Sen Ning's grandfather also consciously stayed away and returned to his hometown. However, Yan Guofeng paid special attention to brotherhood during his whole life. Although he hadn't contacted Grandpa Sen Ning for a long time, he didn't hesitate to take Sen Ning when he heard that he died and his fragile family was left with only orphans and widows. The mother and daughter took it. Moreover, he was very guilty. In fact, he always thought that this old friend would have a very good time. When the two contacted in the early years, the old friend never showed the appearance of a difficult life, and even the two once joked about their grandchildren and granddaughters. So he never doubted, and never went to learn more. He should have thought about it. Mr. Sen is a hard-talking man, just so unwilling to trouble others. As for the previous oral agreement, Yan Guofeng has never forgotten it. However, there is no reason to force it in this era, and Sen Ning is indeed still young, so there is no need to emphasize the topic of marriage. But he swears in his heart that he will never let this little girl suffer any more. If she is willing to marry in the future, then there is absolutely no reason why the Yanjia does not want to marry. You can't do anything while standing. Yan Guofeng said in a deep voice to the words and deeds. The words and deeds raised his eyes slightly. From Sen Ning's angle, he could just see the indifference and carelessness in his eyes, but he hid it quickly. He put the milk box aside, raised his foot and walked over. After approaching, he nodded to Wei Pinfang sitting on the sofa. "Hello." Alienated and polite, unable to fault. Then his gaze fell on Sen Ning again. He briefly curled his lips to her, and said politely without expression, "From now on, Auntie and this sister, if there is anything in life that can't be solved, please come to me at any time." Wei Pinfang hurriedly smiled and said, "You just do it. Are you in high school?" Nodding in words and deeds, senior year of high school. "Oh, the grades should be very good. Ning Ning just entered the first year of junior high, the grades are really not good." Sen Ning did not get good grades, but at the moment when Wei Pinfang spoke up and talked down, she felt inferior and embarrassed. She clasped her hands tightly and kept her head down and said nothing. "It's okay. You can catch up with bad grades. Ning Ning is still young." Yan Guofeng soothed. "You can let Xingzi make up lessons for you in the future. His grades are good. If you don't, you can ask him." Wei Pinfang, "Oh, what's the deal? The third year of high school is a critical time. Don't let Ning Ning disturb him." "What's the matter? He doesn't usually study at home, he is idle." "Don't you study? Can you get good grades?" Sen Ning secretly looked up at his words and deeds, and suddenly felt that his aperture seemed to be a little wider. "Okay, come and sit here." Yan Guofeng pointed to the position next to Sen Ning. Sen Ning's heart tightened inexplicably, but the next second, the man said, "After playing the game, my body is sweaty. I will take a shower first, and you will talk slowly." The whole person relaxed for a while, but felt a little disappointed again. Sen Ning raised his eyes and watched him go straight upstairs. The white sportswear quickly disappeared at the top of the stairs, as if the wind passed by, leaving no room to stop him. After his words and deeds, he didn't come down. It wasn't until the mealtime that Aunt Chen, who was cooking by Yanjia, went upstairs and asked him to see that he came out of the room unhurriedly. At this time, the dining table is full of delicacies, sumptuous to luxury. At the table, there are also more parents who have returned outside their words and deeds. Sen Ning ate her food well, but occasionally she would secretly look at her uncles and aunts who were strangers to her. Yan's father is very serious and looks a bit fierce. As far as the mother is concerned, she is very beautiful. The aunts who lived in Sen Ning's life are all young and graceful, but the woman in front of me, she should be older than her mother, but she looks really young and beautiful. Ning Ning, why don't you eat more, you are too thin. Yan Guofeng said with care. Sen Ning came back to his senses and hurriedly picked up a piece of meat. "Yes, I'm eating." "Well, don't be cautious, this will be your home in the future." "Thank you, Grandpa." After dinner, Yan Guofeng asked her words and deeds to take Sen Ning and Wei Pinfang to where they live. In fact, they live not far away, in a small building next to this villa. Because it is attached to the villa, there is a small corridor in the middle. Yan Guofeng is more considerate. He was afraid that Wei Pinfang and Sen Ning would suddenly feel uncomfortable eating and living with them, so he let them live in this small independent building. It is said to be a small building, but it is not small at all. It has a living room, a kitchen, and 2 large rooms. After Wei Pinfang came in, he went to the kitchen and living room to look around, and as far as he was concerned, he led Sen Ning to see the room. "You will sleep here in the future. There are kitchens for food and drink. If you still lack anything, tell Lao Gao and he will buy it." He stood at the door of the room and didn't go in, just confessed to her in business and taste. "Your luggage will be sent to you later." Sen Ning stood cautiously beside him and nodded after hearing this. "Don't go in and take a look, not satisfied?" No. Sen Ning waved his hand quickly. As he lowered his words and deeds, he saw the little girl's small palms dangling in front of his eyes, and she looked a little amused with her flustered energy. "Sen Ning, I'm not satisfied, it's very, very good here. That's fine. Sen Ning doesn't speak much, so it is only now that her words and deeds find that she seems to be a little stuttered. He narrowed his eyes slightly, but didn't say anything more. You can rest, I'll go now. Yes, words. As he turned around, the little girl called him timidly, but when he looked back at her, she blushed and couldn't call his name. The words and deeds have lived up to now, and there are some family children who come and go around, even if it is not good, it is still outstanding in ordinary people. He had never seen someone as pitiful and timid like Sen Ning. So until now, he has been expressing puzzlement about the fact that she is his fiancée in the past for his grandfather. Of course, this matter will not have any effect on him, after all, it is just a kid, no what? Words and deeds, what else is there? No. Sen Ning pursed her lips and whispered, yes, thank you. Need not. The words and deeds were gone, and soon after, Lao Gao brought the luggage of the two mothers and daughters over. Sen Ning now has her own separate room and is happily organizing her clothes, but her clothes are also pitiful, so when she puts them in the luxurious and bright wardrobe, she looks very sad. However, this did not affect Sen Ning's good mood. Ning Ning. Sen Ning stopped and looked back at Wei Pinfang who entered her room. Mom. You said that Grandpa has found a school for you, and you will go to school in a while. Sen Ning was taken aback for a moment, then, will we go home? Go home? Wei Pinfang sneered, there is no home to go back. Your father's irresponsible person just left us and died. Where are we going back? And who can my bones support? Sen Ning's eyes trembled slightly, but, this is not our home, how long do we live here? It will be your home in the future. Seeing Sen Ning's somewhat ignorant appearance, Wei Pinfang said solemnly, your father is sorry for us, and I am sorry for you. But Ning Ning, now is your chance. You must grasp it. Opportunity, study hard, be obedient, you know. Sen Ning was half confused and understood. Looking at Wei Pinfang's haggard face, she finally responded in a low voice. Yan Guofeng sent a lot of things to the two mothers and daughters, especially Sen Ning. He ordered his men to buy a lot of new clothes for her. But in the next few days, Sen Ning never saw his words or deeds again. Hearing from Lao Gao, he had gone to school. So Sen Ning often sits alone in the small courtyard, staring at this luxurious villa in a daze. She is lonely, but lonely everywhere. My mother is always bedridden because of her illness. No one was with her when she was at home, and she didn't like to play with her when she was in school. So now she is boring here, she is also very used to it. On this day, she secretly took out the camera in the suitcase and sat on a chair in the small courtyard fiddling with it. This camera is her father's favorite and the only thing left to her. But Wei Pinfang hated the camera, so she never took it out in front of her, only took it out secretly when she missed her father. Hey, look, it's her, that's what Tang Zheng said, my brother's wife. Suddenly, a boy's voice came in front of him. It was clear and crisp, and somewhat immature. Sen Ning looked up and saw that several children about her age appeared in the small courtyard. What kind of wife? Nonsense, she is far behind Sister Fei Yan. A young girl with a smirk sneered contemptuously, and walked to Sen Ning. Hey, get up. Who are you? My name is Shui Xiao Xiao. The little girl is 13 or 14 years old, about the same as Sen Ning, but a full head taller than her. Get up and let me see. Sen Ning was not used to facing so many people at once, she was silent, got up, turned her head and walked into the building. You are not allowed to go. Shui Xiao Xiao stopped in front of her. After stopping, she looked at her up and down. Hey, I will only say it once. Brother Yan belongs to Sister Fei Yan. You are not allowed to be there. Here. Shui Xiao Xiao stared. Sen Ning's silent appearance made her full of enthusiasm, like being poured into a basin of ice water. After a few seconds of silence, Sen Ning wanted to go around her again. Xue Xiaoxiu's heart was even more unhappy, so she snatched the camera that Sen Ning was holding carefully in her arms. "Stop it for me." With his arms empty, Sen Ning looked back at her in surprise. "Pay me back." Seeing that she was finally willing to speak, Xue Xiaoxiao said proudly, "No, unless you move away." Don't move. I won't pay you back if you don't move." You pay me back." Xue Xiaoxiao retreated to a few children watching the excitement, and said arrogantly, "We don't have a bun like you here, so you go immediately, and I will pay you back if you leave." You. Sen Ning's cheeks flushed, she couldn't say anything to curse, so she could only grab it. She is very afraid of conflicts with others, but this is his father's camera, and it is also her most precious thing, she will not let others take it anyway. But after all, there were so many people, and she was short, how could she get what Xue Xiaoxiao had in her hands? She was crying in a hurry, and someone beside her said uneasy, "Xiaoxiao, or give it back to her, what if she cries?" "I didn't mean to be embarrassed, I just asked her to leave here." The child who was accustomed to at home said something unreasonable and reasonable. Xue Xiaoxiao snorted, "Regardless of her, let's go." Just turned around and said, "Hey Senning, let me know when you are leaving, and then I will return your broken things." A group of children drifted away, and sparse conversations came over. "Hey, she seems to be crying." "Cry and cry, what's the fear?" "Ah, what should I do if my brother finds out?" "Will you be counseled by words and deeds? Do you want Sister Fei Yan to make up for your homework?" "Yes. That's not enough. Everyone talks about your brother who doesn't like this person, don't you know? You still count on him to support him, not stupid." The author has something to say. Are you stupid? Are you stupid? When the most cherished things are snatched away, even a small counseling bag will do everything possible to get it back. Sen Ning stood there, not crying presumptuously as the group of children thought, but when she looked at their backs, her eyes were indeed red. She is so unfamiliar here, after they left, she didn't even know where to find them. "Go home and tell Mom?" But Wei Pinfang hated the camera so much that she would never want to come back for her. As for Grandpa Yan, she thinks he must be willing to help her, but unfortunately, Grandpa went to another place yesterday and probably won't be back this week. Sen Ning's mind became a mess, and finally deleted, and only words and deeds were left. Before leaving, the girl named Xue Xiaoxiao said that she didn't like her in words and deeds, and it was impossible to help her. She also knows that she doesn't like her in words and deeds, because few people in this world like her. However, the camera of the person who liked her deeply was taken away, so, no matter if it was impossible, she was willing to give it a try. On Friday evening, Words and Deeds came back from school. It was getting dark, and Sen Ning saw her Words and Deeds go upstairs after eating. She didn't dare to knock on his door, so she sat in the living room and pretended to be watching TV. After more than an hour, he got down, he changed his clothes, and the school uniform became simple and comfortable casual clothes. "Grandpa, why are you coming back?" Sen Ning heard him ask Lao Gao. About 3 days later. He didn't say anything, turned around and went out. The person who speaks and does has long legs and walks quickly. When Sen Ning went out with her, he was already a long way away. The moon faintly appeared behind the dark clouds, and the moonlight shone through heavy obstacles and stretched his shadow very long. Sen Ning silently followed behind him, entangled repeatedly on the question of should you stop him. She was afraid of him, but had to force herself to approach him. After walking for a while, Sen Ning saw him turning into a clearing where many sports equipment were lined up. She saw him turn over the dark green horizontal bar after a few strokes. He had his back to her, so she didn't know what he was doing, just thinking, he probably came out to relax after dinner. So she plucked up the courage and walked towards him with her foot raised. That. Sen Ning finally walked to his side. She raised her head and watched her words and deeds sitting on a high place. And at this glance, she also saw what he was doing. He put one hand on his left knee casually, and a cigarette was sandwiched between the index and middle fingers of the other hand. "Why are you here?" After the weird silence, he spoke first. Sen Ning was silent, and took a deep breath. "I have something to do, I want to ask you for help." "Lao Gao is at home, I can tell him if I have something missing." The voice paused, because he saw the little girl standing on the ground trembling clearly with his words and deeds. He twisted his eyebrows, and said, "Is there something that must be done?" "I come." Sen Ning nodded affirmatively. "You said that I have something that can't be solved." "Yes, I can find you." His words and deeds were still cold and indifferent, but he remembered that he had actually said this, so he jumped off the bar and leaned aside casually. "Say, what's the matter?" Sen Ning took a step back unconsciously. She glanced at the spark on his fingertips, and whispered, "My camera was taken away by someone, and I want to take it back." "Camera?" said inexplicably, "Who takes your camera?" Sen Ning thought for a while, and said the girl's name, Shui Xiao Xiao. "Xiao Xiao? You are familiar with those little ghosts?" No, I don't know her." Sen Ning was very nervous, and she kept stumbling while speaking. "They took my camera." "Then the camera is important." Sen Ning immediately nodded. "The only thing my father left for me." Her words and deeds remained calm, and his expression was still cold, but he looked at her with hope, and his heart felt a little soft. He remembered his grandfather saying that the girl's father died, and he died in the car to Tibet. "Why did she grab your camera?" Sen Ning shook her head, but after thinking about it, she said, "I should move away." It's not unclear how the group of little ghosts headed by Shui Xiao Xiao talked and acted. He also immediately understood what Sen Ning said. Maybe they heard some wind from somewhere, so they came to Sen Ning to dominate. Words and deeds, understood, but this kind of thing doesn't seem to be in the scope of what I should do to help you. Sen Ning was taken aback, a little at a loss. His words and deeds curled his lips briefly. "Or if you talk about it, if you persuade me, I will help you." The moon came out from behind the clouds, and the light fell on the ground, and also on his face. He looked at her lightly, and she mustered up the courage to look back at her. One is high and the other is low, and the two lines of sight meet in the air. No one spoke for a long time. Sen Ning thought for a long time, and finally said, "They said, I am you, wife." With both hands tightly tugging in front of her, she looked at him with eager hope and ignorant innocence. "Then can you support me?" Faced with the expression of apparently wrong words and deeds, Sen Ning immediately said again, "Can you support me if you don't like it?" Just this time, okay." There was a few seconds of silence on the empty ground, suddenly, and laughed in a low voice. The corners of his mouth were raised slightly, but then he really laughed. Sen Ning stood in front of him nervously, listening to the laughter that seemed to come from his chest. For a while, it turned out to be in her mind, as if it was the first time he saw him smiling. The way he laughed, it was so beautiful. Her words and deeds really found it interesting. He thought about her countless ways, but he didn't expect her to move the matter out so directly. He shook off the ashes and said with a slight expression, "Child, do you know what a wife is?" Sen Ning, no, kid." He raised his eyebrows slightly in words and deeds, stretched out his hand to compare her height, and smiled. "What are you, not a child, hey?" Sen Ning frowned. "I will grow up." The words and deeds were happy again. "Oh, you will grow up." I really will grow up." His words and deeds raised the corners of his lips. Amused by her silly look, he stretched out a hand and patted the top of her head. "Okay, you will grow up well." With that, he missed from her side and walked in the other direction. Sen Ning turned around, you. I want a camera, come here at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. What? Don't understand. Sen Ning's eyes lit up, understood. I wanted to say thank you again, but my words and deeds stagnated, and suddenly he turned back. Yes, this words and deeds raised the hand holding the cigarette, keep secret. Sen Ning was stunned, and nodded quickly, N. Sen Ning never thought that his words and deeds would really help her, and the moment he nodded, she was happy. At the same time, she also felt that words and deeds did not seem so inaccessible. At least she felt that he was also ordinary a little bit in keeping her smoking secret. After tossing and turning for a night, I finally got through to the next day. After eating, Sen Ning waited for the time, seeing that she rushed out of the small building when it was just 12:50. The clearing was not far away, there were already many people there when Sen Ning arrived. A group of small children sit on the side and play, but they are playing basketball on the basketball court next to them. After Sen Ning approached, the first person to see her was Xue Xiao Xiao. She originally sat on the edge and watched her brothers play, but when she saw Sen Ning, she didn't get angry. Hey, why are you here? Why are you still talking? You didn't even listen to me. Xue Xiao Xiao stood up and looked at Sen Ning dissatisfied. Xue Xiaoxiao's voice was clear and prominent. When she spoke like this, all those who were not playing next to him looked over. Sen Ning was very uncomfortable with the sight of so many people watching the drama or wondering, but her purpose was clear today, so she did not shrink back. She ignored Xue Xiao Xiao, but looked at what she said and did. The latter was withdrawing from the field. He walked to the rest area next to him, picked up the mineral water on the ground, took a few sips and sat down on the stairs casually. His forehead was slightly wet, and he suddenly raised his eyes to look at her, his expression a little sharp. Did you listen to me? Who made you here? You Xiao Xiao, what are you doing? A bigger girl next to her pulled her. Xue Xiao Xiao turned her head, Sister Pei Yan, she is Sen Ning. Meng Feiyan was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously glanced at what he said and did. The latter didn't say a word, but just threw the water in his hand aside, with a bang, and the sound was silent, but it made people feel unexplainably tight. Come here. Suddenly, words and deeds spoke. There is no beginning and no end to a sentence, and I don't know who I am talking to for a while. What do you do while standing? His words and deeds raised his eyes, and now he looked at Sen Ning accurately, come here. Pounding Tang Zheng didn't hit the ball anymore, just let it bounce on the ground, his gaze shifted back and forth between the two of them, and after that, he ran to the side to find a position, a standard spectator posture. Sen Ning secretly took a breath, lifted his foot and walked over. The time is very accurate. The words and deeds glanced at the side position, sit down. Sen Ning gave a cry and sat down obediently. What's the situation? Who is this little girl? Hey, are you from the last century? The news is so unfavorable. Isn't this just the little guest from Yanjia? Little guest, what he said is really tactful. Xue Xiao Xiao became angry, brother Xing, why are you Xiao Xiao, go back and get it. Xue Xiao Xiao was taken aback, what? Her words and deeds pursed her lips slightly, her eyes were chilling, her camera, bring it back to her immediately. Brother Xingzi. Xue Xiao Xiao pointed at her in disbelief, why are you helping her to speak? I'm helping you. Who wants you to help me? He leaned back after his words and deeds, put his hands on the stone steps, and raised his eyes slightly, your reason for bullying is quite fresh. Xue Xiao Xiao was staring at the back, Harry, and her voice became weak, I didn't bully. In that case, now, go back and get it back immediately. Xiao Xiao. She cut her words and deeds, and said lightly, it's okay to bully people, but bullying comes to me, do you know the consequences? The author has something to say, the boss said that if you want to die, give me a rush. There was a sparse whisper. Sen Ning was a little nervous, but not afraid. Staying beside her, words and deeds gave her an inexplicable sense of security. And he just was protecting her. Sen Ning had too little experience of being guarded. She had no friends before. Her father often traveled to take pictures, and the only mother at home was always very strict with her. She lacks warmth so much that when she feels a little tenderness, she feels that the person treats herself very well. She turned her head to look at her, words and deeds calmly. But at this time, she felt that he was not scary at all when he looked at him like this. More than 10 minutes later, Xue Xiaoxiao took something and returned reluctantly. Here. Xue Xiaoxiao said with a cold face, and threw the camera onto Sen Ning's lap. Give it back to you, all right. The words were spoken to Sen Ning, but he looked at the words and deeds with half aggrieved and half flattering eyes. Apologize. No one thought of words and deeds fluttering these two words lightly. Xue Xiaoxiao stared slightly. I paid it all back. 1 yard goes to 1 yard. Words and deeds, snatch someone else's things for no reason, you will always apologize. Xue Xiaoxiao has always been spontaneous and self-willed. She didn't care about her words and deeds, but this time he said such serious things to her for the first time. She felt so wronged that she couldn't come to stage in front of so many people. I don't apologize. What did I do wrong? Xue Xiaoxiao red eyes. Besides, others say you don't want her to show up here. I am obviously helping you, and you are still scolding me. Brother Xing, you too much. Sen Ning had lowered his head to check carefully whether there was a problem with the camera. After hearing Xue Xiaoxiao's words, her pupils visibly trembled. My business, it has something to do with you, kid. The words and deeds seemed to be a little funny, and he said silently, study hard and watch fewer TV shows at 8 o'clock. Xue Xiaoxiao, okay, Xiaoxiao. At this moment, a 16 or 17-year-old girl next to her stood up and walked over. Don't make a fuss, it was originally your fault, I apologize. The shallow and faint voice, neither harsh nor gentle, sounded an inexplicable feeling of coldness and arrogance. Sen Ning raised her eyes and saw a young girl in a short skirt approaching. She was very beautiful, much more beautiful than Xue Xiaoxiao. With an oval face, big eyes, and fair skin, Shensu. This is a girl who can make her feel inferior at a glance. You, hey. Apologizing to Xue Xiaoxiao is absolutely impossible. Under various embarrassments, she turned her head angrily and ran away. Meng Feiyan glanced reluctantly, then turned to her, words and deeds, she has that temper, don't be angry. Words and deeds got up, expressionlessly said, you don't want to be angry with a child. With that, he picked up the jacket next to him and walked forward. Tang Zheng was eager to watch the excitement, and got up hurriedly when he saw the excitement. Yan brother. You won't fight anymore. Stop fighting. After a few words and deeds, he suddenly turned around. Sen Ning. Sen Ning, who was named, looked dumbfounded. His words and deeds wrinkled his brows. What are you still doing? Go home. Go home? It was not her home, but he told her to go home. Sen Ning let out a cry, and hurriedly followed behind him holding the camera. For some reason, she suddenly felt very happy at this moment. After thinking about it, it was probably because of a sense of belonging. One big and one small, walking in tandem. Sen Ning really couldn't keep up with him at the usual walking speed, so she had to trot 2 steps from time to time. Thanks. There was a timid voice behind her, her words and deeds stopped, and she looked back at her. Is the camera okay? Sen Ning was taken aback and nodded quickly. Words and deeds, that's good. Sen Ning gave a sullen grievance, and then said as if she had had great courage, she said you don't want it, I'm at your house, yes, is it true, am I causing you trouble? His words and deeds looked down at her slightly, and did not speak for a while. In fact, he didn't like the fact that he was arranged, and when he first saw her, the absurdity in his heart was also true. However, this is not enough to bother him. Because he also knows that he can control this kind of thing himself, what fiancé is just a verbal promise between the elders, and it may not really force him to do anything in the future. So she lived in his house as just a trivial existence for him, saying that the trouble is over. And what Shueziaxio's group of little kids did, the little girl in front of her is actually innocent, even quite pitiful. He doesn't like others to point fingers at him, so he will lose his temper with Shueziaxio's gang today. No. Really? Sen Ning's eyes lit up. The words and deeds continued to move forward. You will not share with Xue Xiaoxiao and the others in the future. They are used to being spoiled, and you can't bear to make a fuss. Sen Ning, I didn't go with them. Yep. The two of them walked back home quickly, and walked upstairs directly after entering the house. Sen Ning looked at his back. Yes, words. Turning back his words and deeds, why, I still want to say thank you. Sen Ning pursed her lips. She did indeed come. I'm not specifically helping you, but I don't like that group of children making such noise, so you don't need to say thank you. The words and deeds said indifferently. Sen Ning blinked and nodded obediently. Looking at her serious appearance and wanting to laugh, she nodded her head at everything. This kid is too behaved. Sen Ning, haven't you ever called my name completely? On the stairs, the words and deeds. Sen Ning didn't expect him to say this suddenly, so she could only stare at him blankly, letting her face flush. Words and deeds. The name went around the tip of her tongue so many times, but she really seemed unable to call him out, and she could get stuck in her mouth every time. I can. But it's true that it's impolite for a kid like you to call me by name, he said halfway leaning on the armrest, seeming to think about it seriously. Call that group of kids brother. What? In different words and deeds said, you still think you can call your name directly? Sen Ning shook his head quickly. Then call it brother. Good. Try it out. Sen Ning's heart suddenly banged, her eyes facing each other. She saw that his eyes were bright in the light. For a moment, there seemed to be a sea of stars. Lowering her head, Sen Ning plucked up the courage and called her brother very softly. The soft whispering made the words and deeds that had always been cold-faced, so that a little smile was dyed. Go back, you should go to school tomorrow. Yep. Sen Ning turned to the direction of Xialo under his sign, looked at her thin back with words and deeds, and curled her lips slightly. Seeing such a bully, it's no wonder that the group of children would take her to a shabu. Today is the first day to go to the new school. Sen Ning got up early and sat at the dining table to have breakfast. Ning, on the first day you go to school, take a car with Xingzi and let him take you to the class. Su Weiniang, the mother of words and deeds, sat opposite her and said kindly. Sen Ning, Uncle Gao said, take me to school. How can Lao Gao be familiar with the school? He has been studying there for 5 years. It would be nice to let him take you in. The school Sen Ning is going to this time is one of the best in Beijing, and many students at the school have more or less family backgrounds. As for Su Weiniang, she said that she had studied for 5 years because the school was a combination of junior and senior high schools, except that the junior and senior high schools were located in 2 campuses in the north and south, separated by a stone bridge. Sen Ning dared not say no to Su Weiniang, so she responded in a low voice. Su Weiniang, then you can join him later, it's still early, don't worry. Sen Ning nodded and continued to eat breakfast. After eating breakfast, Sen Ning sat in the living room for a while, but time passed by, but she kept coming out of the room without words or deeds. She didn't want to be late for class on the first day, but she was embarrassed to urge her. Oh, why haven't you come down yet? At this time, Aunt Chen said while packing up the dishes and chopsticks, Ning, you can go upstairs and call him, this child is lying in bed again. Sen Ning stared slightly, I. Aunt Chen smiled and said, "It's okay. I usually wake him up. He often slept in bed when the old man is away." Sen Ning stood up straight from the sofa and asked in disbelief, Am I going upstairs? You help Auntie go and call, Auntie will wash the dishes first." With that, Aunt Chen hurriedly went into the kitchen. Sen Ning was silent and glanced upstairs. Oh! A minute later, Sen Ning stood at the door of the room where she said and did. She knocked on the door, but there was no response inside. So she sullened her face and pressed the doorknob cautiously. Pushing open the door gap a little, and following the door gap, she saw a spacious room, but the curtains were tightly drawn and no light penetrated in, so the room as a whole could not be seen clearly. Yes. Sen Ning pursed her lips, remembering that he said yesterday that she wanted to call her brother, so she changed her mouth and whispered, "Brother Sing." There was silence. "Get up, get up." Still no one answered. Sen Ning looked at the bulge on the big bed and moved it slowly. "Brother, yes, it's class." Brush. The person on the bed suddenly turned over, and Sen Ning was startled, thinking he was awake. But after waiting for a while, I realized that this person was still closing his eyes and didn't wake up at all. The air conditioning in the room was very low, but Sen Ning sweated a little from her forehead. She slowly stepped forward and stretched out her hand to pull his quilt. "Get up." And finally there was a reaction, but probably because he was still asleep, his words and deeds were extremely deep, and they sounded particularly hoarse. Sen Ning blushed immediately. She turned around and wanted to leave, but she gritted her teeth again when she remembered the class. "I can't get up again, I have to, I'm going to be late." The sleepiness of words and deeds will be very bad when he is awakened by someone, so the moment he opens his eyes is indeed fierce. So at the first glance, he saw the little girl standing on his bedside and taking a breath of fright. "Why are you here?" Because he had just woke up, his words and deeds were slightly confused. Sen Ning hurriedly said, "Aunt Chen asked me to call you and tell you to go to school." He twisted his eyebrows and glanced at the alarm clock. "Oh! Are you up?" His words and deeds were still not good, but he opened the quilt and sat up. "What?" Sen Ning suddenly whispered and turned around. She was startled by her words and deeds. After reacting, she realized that it was because she was not wearing any clothes on her upper body. He coughed, "You go out first, I'm up." Sen Ning didn't say a word, and moved to the door of the room hurriedly, but stopped when the door was about to close. "Brother, I'm downstairs, waiting for you." The dressing hand paused. "Elder brother." "Quite obedient, just remember it when you call." "But what is waiting for him?" "The author has something to say." "I am across the screen," my aunt laughs. When Sen Ning came out of the room, she stood on the stairs with a flustered expression. She just saw something. Holding her face, Sen Ning tried to reduce the heat on her face, but this time, the picture just appeared in her mind, in a dimly lit room, like Yu Ruzwo's refined figure. "Why doesn't he sleep without clothes?" Sen Ning sighed, feeling very embarrassed. "Ning Ning, did it work?" At this moment, Aunt Chen called out suddenly. Sen Ning was relieved. Get up, get up." "Then you told him to hurry up, and set off after dinner." "Good." After going downstairs, I saw Sen Ning sitting on the sofa properly, passing by, and asked casually, "Have you left yet?" Before Sen Ning could answer, Su Weining, who came out of the study, answered, "Ning Ning is not familiar with the school, so I think it would be better for her to go with you." After a few words and deeds, she didn't answer Su Weining's words, but went straight to the restaurant for breakfast. Su Weining looked at the back of her words and deeds, and stood there a little awkwardly. Sen Ning couldn't understand Su Weining's embarrassment, but felt that her words and deeds must be because she was unwilling to take her to school, so she didn't say anything. Sen Ning has always been a timid, closed, talkative and sensitive girl. If she doesn't say it, it doesn't mean she doesn't think about it. This silence of words and deeds was undoubtedly a blow to her, and the good impression of him that had only risen yesterday disappeared a bit. Auntie, I want to go to class. Sen Ning didn't want to force her words and deeds, so she said to Su Weiniang timidly, "Where is Uncle Gao?" Su Weiniang was also a little uncomfortable. Then I will call Lao Gao." Yap. As soon as Su Weiniang raised her foot to walk outside, she listened to her words and deeds and said, "I won't let me finish the meal." Su Weiniang stopped, and Sen Ning also looked at her words and deeds suspiciously. Turning his words and deeds sideways, he looked at Sen Ning nonchalantly, "Aren't you waiting downstairs for me to go to school? Should you go first?" Sen Ning was surprised. "No, you, then what do you tell Lao Gao to do?" After his words and deeds, he turned around to eat breakfast, and then half ordered and half commanded when he opened his mouth, "Have your school bag back, and leave in 3 minutes." Sen Ning's heart was overjoyed because the frustration of the talent just disappeared cleanly because of his sentence, and the corners of her mouth rose unconsciously. "Oh!" In the end, Sen Ning got in the car to school with one of the words and deeds. This car is usually arranged to pick up and drop off classes from words and deeds. The driver who drove was in his 40s and was an unsmiling middle-aged man. At this time, the two were sitting in the back seat, each silent. Home is more than 20 minutes away from school. When Sen Ning got in the car, she was nervous about words and deeds. Later, when she arrived at school, she was nervous about entering a new environment. She is too unwilling to integrate into the new group. In the previous school, she didn't know why she was excluded by others. Here. The car stopped, pushed the door and got out of the car. Sen Ning carried his school bag and got out of the car. "Classes no. Class 3. Oh, then it's in the building in front." As he said and deeds, he walked forward. Sen Ning trot next to him, her breathing changed with tension. "The east is near the stone, to see the sea. The water is Dandan, and the mountains and islands stand upright. The trees are overgrown, and the grass is luxuriant." After passing through the corridors of the two classes, the words and deeds, and Sen Ning came to the door of the third class's classroom. The students in the classroom are doing daily morning reading. The female teacher standing at the edge of the podium saw someone standing at the door and walked over. "You. Teacher, she is Sen Ning." His words and deeds opened his mouth. The female teacher is the head teacher of the third class. She has long been notified that a new student will be coming to the class today, so she immediately understood Sen Ning's name. "Oh, you're Sen Ning? Hello, I am Teacher Luo, the head teacher of our class." I don't know if it's because the new classmate or the senior in high school uniform, the students who were still in the morning sparsely stopped to read the morning, all looking at the door of the classroom with curiosity and shock. Sen Ning was not embarrassed to see her classmates, but obediently bowed to the head teacher. "Old, good teacher." Compared to Sen Ning's nervousness, his words and deeds are really calm and terrifying. "Teacher trouble, Sen Ning will leave it to you, I will leave first." This school is very big in terms of words, but even the teacher knows the figure of words and deeds. Although the head teacher wonders how this student was sent by words and deeds, he will not ask more. "Okay, she will give it to I am." Nodded in words and deeds, then looked at Sen Ning. "Relax, don't be nervous." The tone was still cold and indifferent, but the words that came out seemed as if a warm current pressed Sen Ning's heart. Sen Ning raised his eyes to look at him, and slowly nodded. After the words and deeds were gone, the head teacher led Sen Ning into the classroom. After a brief introduction, she was placed in the 4th row. "Hey, it's you, I didn't expect us to be in the same class." The morning reading continued again, but the person next to her kept his eyes on her from time to time. A girl in the front row even turned her head to greet her. Sen Ning was startled, looking at the completely unfamiliar face in front of him. She said in confusion, You know me." Zhang Ziyi propped his chin. "I saw it on the court yesterday, Shui Xiaoxiao returned your camera back, do you remember? Are you too? Yes, but there are so many people. It's normal that you didn't see me. Zhang Ziyi raised an eyebrow and smiled, hey, you were so refreshing that day. I'm not too happy to see Shui Xiaoxiao's deflated appearance. The enemy of the enemy, it's a friend, Sen Ning, we will be friends in the future. Sen Ning was inexplicable, but his heart jumped, friend. Well, yes, we will be friends on the United Front in the future. Her reasons were strange, but Sen Ning was still a little happy. She made friends on the first day at school, which she couldn't even think of. You don't like it, Shui Xiaoxiao? Of course I don't like it anymore. Zhang Ziyi snorted, every day I show off his power and show off his might, and everyone who looks at it will be annoying to death. Sen Ning was amused by her exaggerated expression. Zhang Ziyi looked at her and smiled, hey, did you skip a grade, look so small. Sen Ning shook his head, nothing. Zhang Ziyi glanced at her suspiciously, and then whispered, then, do you really have that kind of relationship with your words and deeds? Others in the class may still be curious about the relationship between words and deeds and Sen Ning, but Zhang Ziyi as a child in the same compound has heard of it. Teenage girls are still ignorant of love, but they can be regarded as the beginning of love, and girls are always very passionate about this new secret topic. Sen Ning felt that the words and deeds did not like their strange relationship, so she shook her head subconsciously, no. Isn't there? But everyone doesn't say that, and the words and deeds made their heads for you yesterday. Sen Ning was afraid of words and deeds, but she was indeed full of joy when she thought of what happened yesterday. Someone treated her kindly, and she always remembered it deeply. Seeing that Sen Ning didn't say a word, Zhang Ziyi didn't ask too much. She lowered her voice and said, okay, let's not talk about it in school. Many people here like to do what they say and do. If this matter is known to others, I don't want to hate you so much. Sen Ning. The freshmen who came to class on the first day were personally delivered to the door by their words and deeds. The news quickly spread throughout the junior high school. This person in words and deeds doesn't matter if he is handsome, he is still that kind of genius in learning, and it is the sweet pastry held by all the teachers in the palm of his hand. This kind of good-looking and smart person can naturally be regarded as a male god-level figure by the school girls. But this male is extremely cold, his temperament is so cold that ordinary girls dare not approach it. So suddenly there is such a person who was sent to the door of the classroom by him, and everyone is full of curiosity. But at the beginning, with unkind curiosity, after seeing Sen Ning himself, he became relieved and calm. Oh, it turned out to be like this, then this is a relative who speaks and does deeds? Everyone thought so, instead of linking Sen Ning with the words girlfriend and sweetheart. In fact, Sen Ning does not look ugly, but her development is a bit late, not to mention her small growth, and her complexion is still very dull, so she is really not worth mentioning when there are many beautiful girls in school. Even female classmates would take the initiative to hook her up because they were less guarded, inquiring about what they said and done secretly. Sen Ning is young, but her mind is much more mature than ordinary children. She feels that everyone approaches her because of words and deeds. She should be angry for reason, but for people like her who have been rejected. She said that the feeling of being around by her made her extremely happy. She was reluctant to refuse, and the result of this reluctance was that every few days, someone put a love letter for words and deeds on her desk. On this day, class ends in the afternoon. Ning Ning, let's go out to eat today, how about going home after dinner? Zhang Ziyi packed his school bags and stood by her table. Sen Ning gave her an apologetic look, today, Grandpa Yan told us to go home on time for dinner on time. Zhang Ziyi looked disappointed, well, let's eat together next time. I heard that there is a delicious steak restaurant nearby. Sen Ning nodded, I'm sorry. Hi, it's okay, let's go and go home. Yep. Sen Ning didn't expect to see words and deeds as soon as he walked out of the classroom. He was standing under the steps, wearing a school uniform, with the first button on his upper shirt unbuttoned, standing long, looking very dazzling. Tang Zheng, what are you doing? Wait for us. Zhang Ziyi didn't dare to be presumptuous before his words and deeds, but it was natural for Tang Zheng, but she was shuddered by Tang Zheng as soon as she leaped over. Tisk, it's not big or small. How many times have you said you want to call your brother? What Tang Zheng's is, it's rude. Zhang Ziyi rolled his eyes at him. Oh, I will be great when I am a few years old. I can rely on the old to sell the old. Hey you girl! Tang Zheng put his hand on the shoulders of words and deeds, quite a gesture of elders are hard to behave, you tell me why children are so bad now. His words and deeds curled his lips, and his eyes fell on Sen Ning. Why not behave? This kid is behaved, let brother call him obediently too. What to do while standing? Come here. The words and deeds said to Sen Ning. Sen Ning let out a cry and followed up, why are you here? Wait in the car for a while to see if you didn't come out. Sen Ning, we have delayed class. Oh. Several people turned and walked towards the school gate. The students passing by looked at them boldly or surreptitiously, but Sen Ning had no intention of being here. She touched the love letters in her pocket and looked at them with some embarrassment. The back view of words and deeds. How can I leave it to him? The author has something to say. Sen Ning, people sit in the classroom, and green comes from the sky. Years later. Words and deeds, my wife sent me a lot of love letters when I was a kid, each signed is different. I'll grow up, don't worry, but let me finish writing the plot that should be written at this age. Regarding love letters, it is one thing to accept words and deeds, and whether to give them to Sen Ning is another. In her cognition, it is very immoral to withhold other people's love letters, but there is a voice in her selfish mind that is resisting this. The two concepts are antagonistic, so Sen Ning has been a little restless before and after dinner. Hey, you're blocking my way. Sen Ning stood at the entrance of the small courtyard, and suddenly a little boy's voice came from behind him. Sen Ning looked back and saw that it was the little cousin who said and did what he said and did. Yan Xin Yao is the child of her little aunt, and because her uncle is an adult, Yan Xin Yao is the same as her mother's surname. Yao Yan is 2 years younger than Sen Ning. He is so cute and cute. But Sen Ning didn't like him, because she remembered that when Xue Xiao grabbed her camera that day, he was also nearby. Sen Ning gave way to the side to make way for him. He hummed his words and deeds, and walked forward 2 steps pretentiously, and then suddenly turned around halfway. Are you very proud? Sen Ning was taken aback for a moment, and looked at him somewhat puzzled. Words and deeds said, Xiao Xiao has been sad for several days because of you. I tell you, my brother helped you that day not because he liked you, don't get me wrong. Sen Ning didn't want to care about him, she tugged at the corners of her lips, and smiled casually, I don't know, you are here, what are you talking about? I mean you shouldn't think too much about this little stutter. No one in the family really welcomes you except grandfather. My brother treats you well because you are pitiful. Sometimes, the remarks of peers make people feel more sad. Sen Ning looked at her words and deeds on her angry face, both embarrassed and hurt for a while. She hated herself for stammering for a moment, and hated herself for what Yao said, a bit fanciful. It's you, thinking too much. It's probably because the other party is younger than herself, and Sen Ning's anger dared to come out a little. Me? How can I think too much? Sen Ning watched her words and deeds indifferently, and did not speak for a long time. Words and deeds, hey, what are you doing? Why are you looking at me like that? I was wrong, you have the ability to point it out. It's nothing to say to you. After speaking, Sen Ning turned and walked out of the yard. Yan Xin Yao looked at her thin back, and shouted, why is there nothing to say? Look down on who you are. The other party did not answer, and Yao stood there, rubbing his nose in embarrassment, "You know what a hero is to go, and you have the ability to scold me." Sen Ning came to the open space for training recruits in the compound. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. There was no small square in the open space, but 3 18-year-olds were doing small training. And it was Yan Guofeng who did the training for them. Yan Guofeng was born in the army. Although he does not need to go to battle or train at this age, he is very strict with himself, so his body is very strong, which is fundamentally different from the elderly of the same age. As a soldier, he has very high demands on his grandson. He has grown up in his words and deeds at this age, and training or something has become commonplace. The other two people are Tang Zheng and Xin Zequan, who grew up in the same yard and are associates with their words and deeds, so the three of them have been training together since childhood. At this time, the three of them were climbing the horizontal bar and doing pull-ups. Sen Ning silently sat down on the stone steps beside him, watching his words and deeds easily fight gravity. After a while, the evening training is over. Yan Guofeng went home first. He walked over and moved his muscles as far as possible. He put one hand on the clothesline and suddenly lifted up, but Yu Guang paused when he saw a little the steps. Put down the half-turned clothes again. Sen Ning saw that the texture of the abdominal muscles under his clothes was clear, and he was sweating profusely because of the high amount of exercise. She was embarrassed by his release, she just thought of getting up, and her words and deeds had come over and sat down on the side. He picked up the mineral water on the side and drank half of the bottle. "What's the matter?" Words and deeds put down the mineral water and screwed up the bottle cap. Sen Ning hesitated, took the towel and handed it to him, "Con." He took the words and deeds, and randomly wiped a hand on her face, keeping his eyes on her. Sen Ning couldn't be stared at, so she reached into her pocket and held a beautifully folded letter paper. Heart-shaped. The words and deeds looked down at her palm for a few seconds, and then looked up at her coldly. The two looked at each other, and the atmosphere was inexplicably embarrassing. "Oh fuck, why is it half an hour longer today? It's so hot to me," Tang Zheng said as he walked over here. With the addition of other voices, his words and deeds finally retracted his sight. "Hey, little girl, you are here too." Tang Zheng took off his short sleeves as he spoke. "Dress well." Words and deeds said suddenly. Tang Zheng didn't react for a while, his clothes were already taken off and thrown aside. "Hey!" His words and deeds sink his eyes, picking up the mineral water bottle next to him and throwing it over. "Get your clothes on." Tang Zheng. Xin Zequan gave Sen Ning a meaningful look, walked over to pick up Tang Zheng's littered clothes, and threw them on his face. "Wear it, there is still a little girl here, so what to take off?" "Isn't it hot?" Tang Zheng put on his clothes with an innocent look. "Little girl, do you mind if I take off my clothes?" The named Sen Ning blushed and said nothing. "Do you want a face?" The words and deeds cast a cold glance at Tang Zheng, looked at Sen Ning, and continued the previous topic. "You gave me this thing." Sen Ning's thoughts were also pulled back, and she sent her palm to him. "Yes." The words and deeds were silent, and suddenly felt a bit tricky. He thought that the elders' remarks about unmarried couples might affect her, but he also thought that she might not understand them at a young age. But this time, she actually sent him a love letter? He doesn't have any interest in a child, but he obviously doesn't want to hurt others. "What's this, love letter?" Xin Zequan looked at the excitement, not too much trouble, and came up with a playful look. "Love letter?" Tang Zheng pushed Xin Zequan away. "It's incredible." The words and deeds pushed Tang Zheng away with indifference. "Go aside." Tang Zheng said, "This is a love letter, little girl, you can do it, but is this really good? You are a poisonous elementary school student in words and deeds." Sen Ning pursed her lips and looked at Tang Zheng seriously. "It's a junior high school student, not a primary school student." Words and deeds. Tang Zheng was amused by Sen Ning solemnly. "Puff ha 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 ha, okay, junior high school student. He cleared his throat with his words and deeds, and after a rare consideration, he said, Sen Ning, you are still young, and you probably don't understand many things. Take this thing back. I don't know if it was an illusion of words and deeds. He felt that Sen Ning's eyes lit up when he finished speaking, and he seemed very happy. Sen Ning is indeed a little happy, and even this kind of happiness can offset the frustration caused by the words and deeds Yao said just now. You don't want it. I was embarrassed again by words and deeds, but still insisted, don't. Sen Ning was overjoyed, and quickly took out a pile of letter paper folded love letters from his pocket, heart-shaped, square, and even paper cranes. Then these, do you want to? Words and deeds. Sen Ning looked at him intently, either. The words and deeds were stunned for a moment, but didn't react, so much. Sen Ning blinked his eyes, our class, there are also the next class, Sisters, there are two. Ha 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 ha. Tang Zheng and Xin Zequin laughed frantically. After self-righteous, the words and deeds of the face slapped were silent for a moment, and finally said coldly, throw them all away. Sen Ning, are you all? He twisted his eyebrows and glanced at her, all. Later, Sen Ning ran away with a bunch of love letters. Tang Zheng looked at her back and said happily, I said, is this girl short-sighted? He took a sip of water and said nothing. I also helped my rival to send a love letter to my fiancé. It's too funny, ha ha ha. Halfway through his laugh, he swallowed his laughter back because he was punched by words and deeds. Another person who was not beaten, Xin Zequin said, okay, is there a feeling of being forced to cuckold my wife? Tang Zheng, what is this horrible metaphor? I like it. The words and deeds looked at the two of them strangely, are you perverted? Don't make fun of children. Hey, it's not that I don't know anything in the first day of junior high. Zequin has already had a fifth girlfriend on the first day of junior high. Words and deeds, can she compare to him? Xin Zequin rolled his eyes, you say yours, don't pull me in. Tang Zheng smiled faintly, but has this little girl grown up a little bit? How do you feel that this period of time looks better? No words or deeds, picked up the water on the side and walked back. Is it better? It seems to be whiter. Sen Ning joined the class in the middle of the semester. Compared with the previous school, there are too many outstanding students in this school, and the exams are too difficult. On this day, the monthly test papers were issued. Sen Ning looked at the shocking 58 points on her math paper, and her heart suddenly fell to the bottom. Don't pull the paper, can I get you flowers out of the test paper? A casual voice suddenly came from the side. Sen Ning glanced at the man and moved the test paper to his side again. I've seen it all, 58, covering something. At this time, the person talking about is Sen Ning's desk mate, he has a very literary name, Song Ci. But he himself is not very literary. He has a nice long eyelid and a high nose. When listening to Zhang Zi's gossip, he also heard that several girls in the class like him. However, he always looks like a fool, and Sen Ning occasionally talks to him during the days when he is at the same table, but he always likes to choke her with one or two unpleasant sentences. The beautiful name is, to be upright. Sen Ning secretly glanced at the upright man's paper. It was 97 points, which was a perfect score, just one multiple-choice question. Sen Ning felt uncomfortable, she had tried very hard to keep up with the progress of this class, but still couldn't keep up with them. At this moment, she suddenly remembered the words and deeds Yao said. The words and deeds were good for her, but she was pitiful. Why is she pitiful? Is it because she is really too weak? Also, she couldn't handle even a math paper, she was really weak and useless. The author has something to say, Ning Ning will get better and better, rest assured, ants. Regarding the question of the female protagonist's intermittent speech, she is stuttering now, so that's why. Thank you for leaving a message. Song Si just said a few words as usual, but he did not expect that the person in front of him turned red. He was stunned for a moment, and suddenly at a loss. Hey, I didn't say anything, why are you crying? Sen Ning sniffed and glanced sideways at him. I didn't cry. The eyes are as red as a rabbit and I said I didn't cry. Song Si scratched the back of his head awkwardly. It's actually not a big deal, 58 points. Although it is really low, I don't know how you got it. Scores, but what's the matter? You can understand more by listening to the class. Typically speaking, standing still doesn't hurt, so Song Si's words undoubtedly cost her a few more dollars. Seeing Sen Ning's face changed, Song Si was shocked that he seemed to have said something wrong again. Well, what I said was wrong. Sen Ning. The bell rang, and Sen Ning flipped through the test paper and stamped the tragic score on the table. Song Si looked at the girl with red eyes and silent on the side, feeling a little guilty. Because of his guilt, he always went to see her during class, for fear that she would cry while he was not paying attention. Because if this is the case, then his sin would be serious. The second class was physical education. In the first half, the teacher took everyone to run and warm up. In the second half, basketball and volleyball were given to let everyone move freely. Sen Ning was in a bad mood because of the score, so after playing volleyball with Zhang Ziyi for a while, he sat in a daze under the green shade on the edge of the playground. Hey Senning! Sen Ning turned to look, only to see her table mate Song Si staggered over. She glanced at him, turned her head, and continued to be in a daze. Song Si, you are still angry with me. Sen Ning was not angry with him at all. If he was really angry, he would only be angry with herself. She shook her head and said no. Yes, to make amends, please drink this drink. Song Si handed the peach drink in front of her somewhat awkwardly. Sen Ning was taken aback for a moment. No, I'm not angry. Song Si, I bought it all, hold it. A brain was thrust into her arms. Song Si, regardless of her reaction, sat down beside her carelessly. I said, it's just an exam, you don't need to be so mournful. Sen Ning lowered his head. Too difficult. Do you understand me in class at ordinary times? Some. Then you don't understand why you don't ask me. Song Si patted his chest. I will teach you. Sen Ning looked at Song Si unexpectedly. Teach me. Yes, the same table is not for display. Anyway, it's very simple for me. I won't just ask, what are you afraid of? Really? What's the truth? Song Si smiled and turned his head to look at her, but when he saw her, he didn't know why, he suddenly got stuck. The dappled light circle under the shade of the tree fainted on her body, and the smell of sunlight and the unique fragrance of the girl floated, and he seemed to smell it for a moment. And her clean and pure eyes were more like a golden thread, and she suddenly wrapped around his heart. It didn't hurt, just throbbed, which was a little strange. Song Si turned his head stiffly, and continued to finish what he hadn't said just now. What is true or false about this? You are very strange. Sen Ning rarely showed a sincere smile. Song Si, thank you. Song Si coughed lightly. Small things, or stay a little longer after school in the afternoon, and I will tell you the wrong questions in today's test paper. Sen Ning's eyes lit up. Okay. In the last class, the teacher talked about the test paper, but she just took a lot of questions that everyone can't go wrong, and Sen Ning didn't understand it at all. Now someone is willing to tell her, she couldn't be more happy. Sen Ning's frustration just got better here. On the other hand, Tang Zheng was hit in the head for grabbing a rebound with Xin Zequin. Oh fuck! Xin Zequin, you murdered! Xin Zequin raised his eyebrows. Who makes you inferior to others? I'm not as good as others? I'm Pooh. Tang Zheng walked angrily to the words and deeds sitting on the side. You said, my skills are inferior to him, it's a joke. In different words and deeds said, it's not as good as that. Tang Zheng, damn. His words and deeds curled his lips, leaning aside and closing his eyes to rest. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes madly at the two of them. Just as he cursed, he suddenly saw a familiar figure under the shade of a tree not far away. Hey! Brother Yan! Brother Yan! Brother Yan! Tang Zheng turned around and shook the shoulders of his words and deeds while watching. He frowned because of his words and deeds. Tang Zheng, no, look over there. With patience in his words and deeds, he looked in the direction he was pointing, and he was really taken aback when he saw it. Not far away, under the shade of a tree, a pair of young girls sat side by side. The young man tilted his head and didn't know what he said to the girl. The girl raised her lips and smiled. Although restrained, she was also sincere. He squinted his words and deeds, confirming that the girl is the little devil who lives in his house. Tang Zheng, oh, the world is getting worse. Are junior high school students going to fall in love? My senior year old man doesn't even have a girlfriend yet. Words and deeds. Tang Zheng grinned and hooked the shoulders of the words and deeds. I said, what's the situation? How can your little fiancé be so good with other little boys? Brother Yan, I can tell you. Now the tricks of little ghosts are very high. Now, your little fiancé is so stupid, she might have been cheated away. Words and deeds, you shut up. Tisk, I'm serious. His words and deeds sank his eyes, got up, turned his head and walked towards the exit of the playground. Tang Zheng, where are you going? Class hasn't ended yet. After school in the afternoon, Sen Ning ran all the way to the school gate and talked to the driver who was picking up and going home tonight. Then he returned to the classroom and listened to Song Ci to give her a math test paper. As a result, he didn't see Sen Ning after he got in the car. She hasn't come out yet? Asked casually. The kid is still in the classroom, and he said let us go first. He frowned upon hearing the words and deeds, still in the classroom. Yes, look, are we going back? Without words and deeds, after a while, he opened the door and got out of the car. Uncle Zhong, you should drive back first, and I will go back by myself at night. Driver, this, or else I'll wait here. No, I have something wrong. Okay, then, I'll drive the car back first. After getting off his words and deeds, he walked into the school gate. The driver saw that his back disappeared before starting the car. In the classroom at this time, Song Ci was giving Sen Ning the third topic. Do you understand? Sen Ning nodded. It turned out to be like this, it seems pretty, very simple. It's quite simple, but your mind didn't turn around for a while. Song Ci supported her head with one hand, and reached her shoulder with the other to pat. Hey, you are actually quite smart, really. Sen Ning was a little embarrassed to be so boasted. She smiled, and when she was about to say something, she suddenly heard someone calling her at the door of the classroom. Sen Ning. The voice was low, and there was no emotion, and it sounded a little cold. Sen Ning looked back in surprise, and saw that the words and deeds at the door had already stepped forward. He glanced at Song Ci, and then at the hand that Song Ci put on Sen Ning's shoulder. Uncle Zhong's family has something wrong, so let's go first, I'll come over and talk to you. Sen Ning, I already told Uncle Zhong that I don't need to pick me up today, I will go home by myself. He said and said without changing his face, then he didn't tell me, I thought you didn't know you want to go back by yourself today. Sen Ning, this way. Well, so you packed up and went home with me. Sen Ning paused with the pen hand. I haven't. Her test paper is not finished yet. Song Ci said at this moment, well, are you her brother? The words and deeds have said things like going home. Song Ci naturally remembered what some girls in the class said, Sen Ning should be a relative of words and deeds. He did not shook his head or nodded in words and deeds, but said, then go home and talk. Sen Ning was taken aback. Hey! If Grandpa knew that I would let you go home alone, what would you think? He frowned. If you can't go home and ask me, didn't you tell me earlier? Sen Ning's heart jumped. Grandpa had said this, but how dare she really disturb him? But this thing she didn't dare to be said by her words and deeds. She suddenly felt full of joy. Hurry up, it will be dark if you don't go back. Oh, oh. Sen Ning hurriedly began to pack his school bags. When Song Si looked around, he felt that an unfriendly gaze had been staring at him. He raised his eyes and saw a somewhat serious expression in his words and deeds. Song Si coughed awkwardly. Then, Senning, I'll go home first. Good. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. After walking to the classroom, the words and deeds walked forward, and a few steps later, Sen Ning followed. Neither of them spoke, one was originally indifferent, and the other was not good at speech. Sen Ning lowered her head, and suddenly ran into a wall of flesh as she walked, covering her forehead and looking up. She saw her words and deeds stretch out her hand and knocked on her head. Would you not walk? You stop. Oh, blame me. No. His words and deeds cocked the corners of his mouth, glanced to the side, and suddenly said, Sen Ning, at your age, it is the most important thing to learn. Sen Ning didn't know why he said this, but because he was right, he nodded obediently. The words and deeds continued, don't have other thoughts, and don't get too close to those who are not familiar, such as boys, or those who ask you to send me letters. Sen Ning thought that she might have made him unhappy that day when she sent the letter on her own terms, so he didn't want her to be in touch with them and do that again. Of course she can understand it, but boy, has she gotten close to anyone. He doesn't want her to approach other boys, does that mean? Sen Ning's heart jumped because of her own fantasies, but the next second, she heard him say in exactly the same tone as the elders, I don't want to control you, but something happened, I'm not good at explaining to Grandpa and your mother. Do you understand? The young girl's sprout little heart instantly cooled down, and thousands of thoughts flashed past like a meteor that suddenly appeared in the sky. For a long time, she whispered, She was satisfied with her words and deeds as she did not resist at all, so she turned her head and moved on. After walking a few steps, he suddenly looked back. Sen Ning would notice that he had stopped, so she stopped abruptly to prevent herself from hitting him again. Why, what's the matter? The words and deeds looked at her condescendingly, and suddenly reached out and picked up the school bag that seemed to be heavy on her back, and with him, Sen Ning's hands were also held up by the school bag. Sen Ning was stunned with a big pang spreading his wings. Her words and deeds looked at her funny and silly appearance, and the corners of her mouth curled a little. Afterwards, he whispered, Let go, I'm back. The author has something to say. This article is not in the form of interspersed narratives, it will be sent from lowercase to uppercase. The trailer, Chapter 11 is a long wave. Guess how old the next wave is? At dusk, the sun will set. Sen Ning looked at her words and deeds carrying her water-pink school bag on one shoulder, feeling a little bit subtle. It's one thing for a girl's sprout heart to be hit, and another thing for the loneliness of a teenage child to be comforted. Sen Ning thought, it seems that no one has accompanied her home like this before, and no one will carefully discover that her school bag is heavy and her shoulder hurts. Later, the two returned home in a taxi. The moment he entered the house, a strong smell of rice came, and he turned around and handed her the school bag. After eating, go to my room and bring the test paper. Sen Ning nodded and held the school bag tightly in his arms. In a warm home, there are family members who are waiting for her to eat at home, as well as him who will go home with her. At that moment, Sen Ning felt that she had everything. After eating, Sen Ning carried her school bag and went upstairs under the gaze of Yan Guofeng's approval. Pushing aside the room where words and deeds were made, she stood at the door properly and called to her brother in a low voice. I finished the meal before my words and deeds. I was sitting at the desk at this time, flipping through a book of extracurricular readings at random. Come here. After Sen Ning approached, he glanced at the book he was holding, with the word gun on the cover. In the next second, his words and deeds packed the books into the small bookshelf on the side. Why are you reading this book? She patted the chair beside her words and deeds and motioned her to sit down. I like it. Do you like this? Sen Ning was a little curious. Then, will you be like grandpa in the future? It's the same. The words and deeds smiled briefly, and then suddenly said, it's not the same. Sen Ning didn't understand the meaning of what he said, and only said, that's good. Words and Deeds spread out her test paper, and said casually, is it good? Then have you thought about what you are going to do in the future? Words and Deeds can only be asked at random, because he also knows what dreams are in the minds of children at this age. But he didn't expect that Sen Ning was silent for a while, and suddenly said, I want to be a very good photographer. Could it be that Sen Ning didn't stumble when he said something, and gave her an unexpected look? Photographer. Well, the most beautiful, surging, and most alarming picture recorded. Sen Ning engraved everything her father had said in her heart, and she said every word, I want to be the recorder of time. Sen Ning seemed to have returned to the moment when his father was by his side. He took his camera and photos and showed them to her like a few jiaozhen. She was still young and didn't know whether the photos were good or bad, but she could feel the kind of being a photographer. Proud and satisfied. Ah! Did I say too much? Sen Ning came back to her senses and asked awkwardly. His words and deeds looked deep, and he curled his lips. No. Actually, I'm talking nonsense, don't tell my mother, she doesn't like dad like that. Back to reality, Sen Ning also has a mother who hates photography. Turning her pen in words and deeds casually, her eyes were on her test paper. Sen Ning, do what you want to fight for by yourself, don't be swayed by others. Sen Ning was taken aback for a moment. If you really like it, you have to work hard for it. If you just talk about it, it's really a dream. He turned his head and glanced at her. Understood. Under the bright light, Sen Ning was almost burned by his indifferent and gentle side face. She suppressed the feeling that 100 flowers bloom in her heart, and nodded lightly. Which is the problem, pointed out. At the moment of words and deeds, her thoughts were drawn to her study. Before your dream starts, you have to solve the most basic things. Time passed by, and halfway through, the aunt at home gave them a juice to come in. This question is actually the same as that multiple choice question. Think about whether you have any ideas. After the words and deeds, he took a sip of orange juice, and his brows frowned as soon as he swallowed. Sweet. Sen Ning looked at him sideways. Hey. It's nothing. His words and deeds pushed the orange juice farther, with one hand on his head, and looking at her test paper sideways. Did you think of it? Sen Ning glanced at him. Under the light, his eyelashes left a small silhouette on the white face, shaking and shaking, so that he could see the sultry. Still not. Seeing her words and deeds, she didn't write for a long time, raised her eyebrows slightly, and looked at her. Sen Ning surreptitiously looked at being caught upright, and his heart beat for a while, and the whole person became nervous. I. It's okay. The words and deeds took her pen and took out a piece of draft paper. I'll do the calculation for you. One last time. His words and deeds were slightly serious and serious. You can't always rely on me. You have to figure it out next time, no if you don't. Sen Ning was a little ashamed, holding both hands tightly on the side of the table. I didn't scold you again. The cloud of words and deeds glanced lightly. You don't need to be nervous. Sen Ning, oh. If anyone in this world is willing to treat you tenderly, then you can count all the meanness and barrenness that have been in the past. Sen Ning was lying on the bed, staring at the indistinct shade of the tree outside the window in a daze. She remembered that Zhang Ziyi occasionally told her about the little gossip in the class, who liked whom and who confessed to whom. She said, that was love. Sen Ning is not sure what love is, she only knows that she can tell what is like and what is like very much. As far as it goes, she seems to like it very much. Sen Ning turned around, hugged an extra pillow, and blushed secretly in the one-person room. She didn't dare to close her eyes, because once she closed her eyes, she would appear as if she was serious about her words and deeds not long ago. She often felt that he was indifferent, but at that time, she felt that he was gentle enough to make people drown. After class the next day, Sen Ning packed up her school bags and walked from the classroom to the school gate. Sen Ning, did you understand today's class? Song Si asked when he walked next to her. Sen Ning nodded, yet. Song Si, that's good, if you don't understand, remember to ask me. Okay. As soon as Sen Ning exited a good word, she saw the sum of words and deeds standing next to the car by Uncle Zhong at the school gate. Meng Pian. She has only met Meng Pian once, that time on the playground of the compound, but in school, she often heard people mention her. And the most powerful label on her is, School Flower. Sen Ning looked at her fair skin and exquisite noble face, and she could only think in her heart that she could indeed bear the name of the School Flower. Hey, that's the words and deeds and Meng Pian, right? Song Si chuckled lightly, and said with a rare gossip, I heard that they are a pair. You are close to the words and deeds, do you know the inside? Sen Ning's face was slightly stiff, no. Sen Ning said decisively, they are not a pair. Song Si, really, I thought it was. I thought. Everyone takes it for granted. Indeed, the appearance of a talented woman, they stood together as if they were paintings, they really matched well. But, it doesn't look good, but it's really good, isn't it? Sen Ning's inferiority complex is causing trouble, but there is a small piece deep in her heart that is waving the flag and shouting that if one day, she can become very good, then she who is standing next to him will definitely look good. Sen Ning. I saw Sen Ning coming out of the same table with her from a distance. His brows were lightly frowned, and his tone was a bit of dissatisfaction, go faster and get in the car. Sen Ning didn't say a word, speeded up and walked over. His words and deeds fell faintly on Song Si, until he turned and left before looking at Sen Ning. Did you postpone the class? Sen Ning pursed her lips and nodded. Words and deeds opened the car door for her. When Sen Ning bent down and got in, she heard the words and deeds asking Meng Pian, send you a ride. Meng Pian pointed to another car not far away, my dad is here to pick me up. With a gratitude of words and deeds, then let's go first. Good. Words and deeds also got into the car. Sen Ning passed him and looked at Meng Pian who was standing outside the car window. Coincidentally, she was also looking at her. The two looked at each other silently, each with their own thoughts. After a while, Meng Pian smiled at her slightly, a beautiful smile, neither sharp nor pretentious, but Sen Ning sensitively felt her least favorite emotion. That's a kind of gaze for the weak. As time passed day by day, the final exam was getting closer and closer, and Sen Ning worked harder and harder. Wei Pinfang found that the light in Sen Ning's room was on several times when she got up in the middle of the night. When she opened the door, she could always see her reading, sometimes doing questions, sometimes listening to English with headphones. Wei Pinfang didn't say a word about it, but occasionally sent her something to eat in, and then silently returned to her room. Sen Ning at school also began to make some subtle changes. For example, she talked more with classmates, spoke more in class, and became more bold when asking questions about Song Si and Zhang Ziyi. This change was not brought to her by others, but forced by herself, because her stuttering problem was actually psychological, so what can be cured is just taking the step in her heart. Later, after finally passing the final exam, the moment Sen Ning had been nervous for a few days finally let go of the test scores. After school, she carefully put the test papers in her school bag and hurried to the school gate. She wanted to be the first to show her words and deeds the fruits of her hard work. Although it is impossible for her to rise to the top in a class full of talents, her ranking in the middle and upper reaches of this time is already a huge leap from the countdown in the previous monthly exam. Uncle Zhong. Sen Ning said in the car, Brother Xing, haven't you come yet? Uncle Zhong said, Mr. Yan came to pick him up at noon. He didn't come to class in the afternoon. Mr. Yan was talking about the words and deeds of his father, Yan Su, and Sen Ning was taken aback. Where did you go? I don't know this, but this meeting should already be at home. Sen Ning nodded, and said eagerly, then let's go home quickly. Okay. Along the way, Sen Ning would want to know her reaction to her performance improvement so fast. Maybe there was an approving look, maybe he would praise her but not necessarily. Sen Ning's heartbeat speeds up when he thinks of that picture, and he can't wait to rush to the edge of words and deeds in the next second. So, as soon as the car reached the door, Sen Ning got off the car happily, the corner of her mouth rose unconsciously, and she reached out and pushed open the door. She didn't expect her words and deeds to just open the door. She was overjoyed, and when she just wanted to speak to him, she saw him passing by her indifferently. That kind of indifference is not the kind that he usually does not consciously show, but it is hung on his face and held in his eyes. It is really only when the mood is extremely cold. And this indifference is enough to wipe out Sen Ning's enthusiasm every inch. Sen Ning turned her head suddenly and saw her words and deeds quickly walk out of the courtyard. She stood at the door blankly, unable to recover. Ning Ning, you are back. What are you doing standing at the door? Come in. Aunt Chen helped her take down her school bag. I'm here, so I'll remember to call my brother later. Sen Ning, hey. Nanru is back. You haven't seen him before. He is Xingzi's younger brother. The author has something to say. Su Nanru appeared on the stage. That year, the two were still in a relationship. Su Nanru is from just bending the waist for him. I haven't read it before and it doesn't affect reading. Sen Ning didn't know that his words and deeds had younger brothers besides his words and deeds Yao, who were as old as him. Ning Ning, this is Nanru, Su Weining introduced to her enthusiastically when she approached the living room. Usually he lives on campus, so you haven't seen him since he has been here for a while. He is my second son. Sen Ning obediently greeted her, and the other side glanced at her and nodded. There was no fluctuation on the surface, but Sen Ning was a little surprised, why no one had mentioned him before. He looks only one or two things as long as his words and deeds, but his cold and indifferent temperament seems to be carved out of a mold. When a person sits there, his forehead seems to say, no strangers should enter. Sen Ning went back to her own small building after saying hello. The fact that she had a brother in her words and deeds didn't make her take it seriously, but she kept hanging about her final exam. She was looking forward to showing him her report card, but his expression just now looked a little scary. What's wrong with him? I'm back. Wei Pinfang came out of the room. I haven't eaten the food yet. No. I'll go next to the kitchen. Mom. Sen Ning stopped Wei Pinfang and took out the final transcript from his school bag. This, examination result. The results came out? How did the exam go? Wei Pinfang took the report card and glanced at it with no extraneous expression. The class is ranked 19th. You only got 19th in the exam. Sen Ning, this time. You can still be in the top 10 in elementary school. Why is it getting worse after entering junior high school? Sen Ning hurriedly explained, this is different, the one in elementary school, simple. Where is there something simple and not simple, then how can others do well in the exam, and how you study well is to do it? No. Sen Ning suddenly felt inexplicable, her tongue was astringent, and the joy at the moment of getting her transcript was wiped out by the successive blows after returning home. I have improved. She said this very quietly, so low that Wei Pinfang didn't hear it at all, but Sen Ning didn't mind, because she didn't expect any reaction from her at the moment. Her attitude and words had hurt her. So Sen Ning just subconsciously comforted herself. She didn't act, she was working hard. After the meal, Sen Ning carried her school bag and prepared to enter the house. Ning Ning. Sen Ning turned her head and saw Wei Pinfang suddenly said, "Have you seen that brother Xingzi?" Sen Ning nodded. Wei Pinfang, then remember, that brother's surname is Su, so don't make any mistakes then. Sen Ning was surprised. Follow, do you have Aunt Su's surname? Wei Pinfang was too lazy to talk about these messy things, but worried that Sen Ning would say something wrong in front of the Yan family in the future, so he explained, yes, because Su Weiniang only entered the door 3 or 4 years ago, so Su Nanru would be 14 or 5 years old. It's been a long time since the biological mother who went to work has been dead for many years, and Su Weiniang is just his stepmother. Yes, but Su Nanru. It's pretty much like the line, right? Sen Ning nodded. Of course the two of them will be a bit like half-mothers. Wei Pinfang frowned, with a slight sarcasm in his eyes. There is really nothing good about a man. I married one at home and hooked up with one outside. Oh, Su Weiniang is also really lucky. After so many years, I finally got my head. Wei Pinfang managed to think about himself, and this kind of adult speech did not avoid Sen Ning in the slightest. And Sen Ning was completely shocked. So, is Uncle Yan peddling 2 boats? Suddenly, Sen Ning felt a little difficult to look at the words directly, and suddenly understood why the words and deeds were so bad today. She never thought that she looked glamorous, what she wanted and what she said and did, there was such a story behind it. In the next period of time, Sen Ning didn't encounter words and deeds much. Sometimes when they met, they just passed by side, without even stopping a word. Later, New Year's Eve arrived. That day, Sen Ning followed Wei Pinfang to the market to purchase ingredients. Tonight everyone will have a New Year's Eve dinner at the dinner table, so Wei Pinfang also planned to cook some dishes for everyone to try. After returning, Sen Ning helped Wei Pinfang in the kitchen. There is a distance between the kitchen and the living room, so Sen Ning didn't respond when she heard a vague exclaim from outside. Sen Ning ran out in a panic until some porcelain slammed on the ground and made a loud noise. And when she came out and saw the picture in front of her, she was stunned. It was broken to be a white porcelain vase on the coffee table, and on the ground, there was actually a scuffle with Su Nanru's words and deeds. The 2 fists hit each other's face and body without mercy. What are you doing? Yan Sui and Yan Guofeng also came out of the study after hearing the sound, and Yan Sui stepped forward and pulled them away. The words and deeds that were pulled apart and Su Nanru were calm. The 2 seemed to cool down in an instant, but they just looked at each other indifferently without saying a word. What are you guys doing during the Chinese New Year? Have you put me in your eyes? Yan Guofeng was angry, slapped on the coffee table, fearing that the air became a bit rigid. Su Weiniang was there just now, she secretly wiped her tears, and said in a panic, "Dad, don't be angry, they are just. Don't explain to them first, do it, Nanru, say it yourself. Words and deeds, there is no reason, just can't understand the other party. What are you talking about, he is your brother." He said solemnly, "You are the brother of words and deeds, and you are not serious or serious. Usually training is used to beat his own people." The words and deeds became colder and colder. "Your own person? You dare not say such things when mom is still alive. Yan Su, you. Shut up your words and deeds." Yan Guofeng frowned and turned to Su Nanru. "Nanru, what's the matter?" Su Nanru's tone was calm, as if he was not in the fight just now. "It's okay," he also said it, "just can't understand the other party. You brats. Because it was New Year's Eve, Yan Guofeng's daughters and grandsons who were not at home had all returned, but everyone watched this scene and did not dare to persuade them. In a moment of silence, Sen Ning stood on the side, watching the words and deeds and Su Nanru walk away under the glare of the elders, and then went back to their own rooms. This attitude really makes Yan Guofeng unable to calm down. It's the reverse. It's the reverse. Yan Guofeng sat on the sofa and gasped, let them go, no need to scream for dinner. Let's take care of ourselves. A New Year's Eve dinner was boring. Everyone decorated the piece and asked the juniors to toast drinks to Yan Guofeng, but everyone knew that because of his two grandsons, Yan Guofeng had never been interested. After the New Year's Eve dinner, everyone left. Yan Guofeng didn't let people give food to the two fighting boys, so everyone didn't dare to express anything. It was late at night, and Sen Ning kept thinking about her words and deeds, so she secretly walked back to the villa from the small building. She had learned something from Aunt Chen earlier that her words and deeds and Su Nanru would fight because of Su Weiniang, probably because her words and deeds were indifferent to Su Weiniang and he said two things that Su Nanru didn't like to hear, so the two ridiculed each other, and then he said nothing to do it. To be honest, Sen Ning's words and deeds have always been a particularly mature image in Sen Ning's words, so his sudden behavior of such a juvenile temperament was beyond her expectation. Perhaps, in front of parents, everyone is a child at all ages. Aunt Chen. Oh, Ning Ning, you came just right. Aunt Chen pulled her into the kitchen. You think you must be hungry if you haven't eaten anything after all this is so late. The father loves you, so you can send him something to eat. Even if it is discovered, I won't be willing to scold you. Yes, yes. Sen Ning was anxious to find a reason to see what he said and did. It's great. Aunt Chen muttered as she put some food on the plate. I just saw Weiniang sent Nanru to Nanru. Hey, is it a baby? Sen Ning felt a little astringent in her heart, but she didn't dare to make any comments. She only said, Auntie, are there any boiled eggs? What do you want that? I don't like eating. No, his face is a bit swollen. Oh. Look at me and forget all about it. Aunt Chen is busy preparing to boil eggs. Wait, you will be ready soon. A few minutes later, Sen Ning went upstairs with a dinner plate. She knocked on the door a few times, but there was no response inside. Sen Ning hesitated and pressed the doorknob lightly. There was no light in the room. Sen Ning looked around, but found that the words and deeds were not in the room. She walked in and put the dinner plate on the desk. What about people? The room was very quiet, and Sen Ning pressed the light switch, only to find that the balcony was not closed tightly. When she stepped forward, she saw a person standing outside the balcony. The person on the balcony probably noticed that someone had turned on the light in his room, and turned his head to look, so Sen Ning met his extremely cold eyes. What are you doing? He leaned against the railing with his words and deeds, with a cigarette in his right hand. Sen Ning, give me food. No, take it away. But you haven't eaten yet. Not hungry. Then you are injured. The words and deeds frowned slightly, and did not say anything. A long silence. Sen Ning looked at his indifferent appearance, and suddenly a wave of anger rose in her heart. Looking at him, she repeated every word, you, hurt. Words and deeds. Sen Ning bit her lip, and her heart was suddenly angry and wronged. It was the first time they talked in so many days, but how could he be so cold? Besides, how could he not care about his body so much? Probably dizzy, Sen Ning did the most daring thing since she came to talk in a daze. She stepped forward and snatched the cigarette in his hand, threw it on the ground, and stomped it out with one foot. Words and deeds, you wait. Sen Ning didn't wait for the reaction of words and deeds, turned around and went back to the room. When she came out again, she held a warm egg in the palm of one hand. What do you do? His words and deeds raised his eyebrows, somewhat novel to Sen Ning's rare boldness. But Sen Ning did not answer him, but grabbed the collar of Words and Deeds with his other hand, and pulled it down forcefully. He was caught off guard by Words and Deeds, and he was really bent down by the little man in front of him. In the gap between his astonishment, the warm chicken rice was rubbed against the corner of his mouth. Hiss! The painful sound of Words and Deeds pulled Sen Ning back from her enthusiasm. She was taken aback for a moment, her eyes trembled in panic. It hurts, does it hurt? This pain is nothing to Words and Deeds. The night is shrouded, and the winter in the capital is so cold that it makes people feel chilly, but at this moment, watching the little girl whose nose is red with cold, he blurts out for some reason. It hurts. The author has something to say, regardless of 3 or 721, let's say it hurts. Su Nanru, you will thank me in the future. Because he said it hurts, Sen Ning's movements were lightened. She carefully pressed the egg against his face, her expression intently as if she was treating a good jade. There is another one inside. Wait, I'll get it. The egg was a little cold, and Sen Ning turned back into the room and walked hurriedly. Looking at her back in Words and Deeds, slowly straightened up her body. For a moment, he felt that the empty winter night was not so unbearable. Okay. The little girl came out again, she looked up at her, her concerned eyes were clear, and she couldn't find any falsehood. Children usually don't deceive, think about their words and deeds. You, bent down. Sen Ning pulled the hem of his clothes. He gave a rare laugh, he reached out his hand and touched her head, go in, it's cold outside. After all, he missed from her side and entered the house. Sen Ning stood there blankly, her hand holding the egg tightened slightly. This was the first time she saw him smile in so many days. She didn't know, it turned out that a person's laughter or not can arouse such a big wave in her heart. After entering the house, his words and deeds took Sen Ning's eggs and massaged himself. This, Aunt Chen asked me to bring you something to eat. Words and deeds, thank you. Then you eat quickly. Sen Ning stood a little awkwardly on the side, I'm leaving now. Wait. Words and Deeds suddenly stopped her. Sen Ning looked back, hey. I have forgotten during this time, I haven't asked you how you are doing in the final exam. He still remembers. Sen Ning was also very nervous when he was overjoyed, I took the exam for class 19. She looked at her unexpectedly, and if I remember correctly, she had counted down before, and it was pretty amazing to keep up so quickly. A lot of progress, it seems that you are really working hard. He didn't know how such a simple sentence warmed the girl's disappointment. For the words and deeds, it is really not a good result to take a class with a dozen or so. And he rarely boasted, if it weren't for these 2 eggs tonight, maybe he wasn't interested in talking about them. But Sen Ning looked at him with piercing eyes, as if he was holding the horse's rein on the edge of the hollow cliff. The heart that had been lost for so many days was suddenly comforted, and his eyes were red. I will be better. He didn't notice the obsessive gaze of the little girl standing in front of him. He lowered his eyes and whispered, go on. Sen Ning happily walked out of his room. When she went downstairs, she saw that the pendulum on the wall was pointing exactly at 12 o'clock. She was startled, and immediately turned her head and ran upstairs without hesitation. This time, she broke into the room of words and deeds without knocking the door. She was about to get up and change clothes. Hearing the sound, she looked back at her, what's wrong? Happy New Year! The words and deeds froze for a moment, and at this moment, the mobile phone he placed beside began to make noises, and the New Year greeting text messages from all directions were only a second slower than Sen Ning's New Year greetings. Sen Ning gasped slightly, I'm leaving. Walking out of the room again, at the moment the door was closed, she heard the slightly smiling voice of the person in the room, Sen Ning, Happy New Year. Words and Deeds and Su Nanru have not spoken since that fight, but the two were also extremely calm. They were obviously under the same roof, and they didn't give each other a single look. After the beginning of school, Su Nenru returned to school, and Yanji returned to his former peace. At the beginning of the new semester, Sen Ning worked hard as always. He listened very carefully to every class. After returning home, he would practice her spoken English in addition to studying. She tried very hard to climb up, very hard to make herself better. Throughout the semester, Sen Ning's relationship with words and deeds has also gotten closer. His words and deeds have to be admitted to the military academy, so in addition to his studies, he trains with the troops outside every day. Sen Ning would ask him about his studies when he was free, and when he was not free, she would also go to the side of the training field, reading a book while watching every move of the phalanx. The world she imagined is very big, and she wants to see many, many places, but within an inch of a circle, her world is also very small, and in her eyes only words and deeds can be pretended. She has been cold for too long, so when she finally gets a little warmth, she will do her best to keep this warmth. But there are some things that she can't keep, and some people are destined to go far. Later, when the college entrance examination passed, many people were waiting for scores and results. The atmosphere that the speaker should be nervous is joyful, not for anything else, just because the words and deeds have been approved in advance for admission to the military academy, and the medical examination and interview have been passed. For a student who doesn't have to worry about grades anymore, these days should be happier. But the words and deeds are as cold and indifferent as ever, as if this is nothing more than a trivial matter. Sen Ning thought, this is probably a really capable person, because everything is in his own plan and control, so he won't make waves about everything that happens. That year, the summer vacation was not over. At that time, it was still popular for school to make up classes, so the second-year students all returned to school half a month earlier. Everyone sighed, but for Sen Ning, there was no difference. This day was an ordinary afternoon for Sen Ning. Hello. Song Si came back from playing basketball, holding mineral water in one hand and strawberry milk in the other. He threw the milk on Sen Ning's table. Sen Ning was writing the title, and glanced up. What are you doing? Song Si wiped his sweat and said casually, I have an extra bottle of milk. I will give you a drink. Sen Ning, why do you buy more? That's right, don't buy more. Song Si sat down next to her and thought for a while, buy one get one free at the commissary. I just gave Xiao Pang a drink and he said not to come. After that, I observed Sen Ning, cough, you can drink it for you, I tell you, drinking more milk can grow taller. Sen Ning pursed her lips and smiled restrainedly, thank you. You are at the same table, they are all with revolutionary friendship. Song Si broke the milk straw, poked it into the tube, and handed it to her, drink. Sen Ning put down the pen, and Zhang Ziyi, who was sitting in front when she was about to take Song Si's milk, suddenly jumped up from the chair. Sen Ning was startled by her, what's wrong with you? Zhang Ziyi turned his head, with a panic expression, damn. Sen Ning. Sen Ning, hey. He's going to leave so soon, isn't it half a month away? Sen Ning was taken aback for a moment, what? Tang Zheng, he actually told me that he was leaving in a while. Zhang Ziyi handed her mobile phone hidden in the drawer to her, and Sen Ning took a look at it and gave a chuckle in her heart. Tang Zheng and Yan Xingzi have been tested in the same place. If he is going to leave, doesn't it mean that he will also be leaving? He clearly said that he will stay at home for a while. Hey Sen Ning! Zhang Ziyi looked at Sen Ning, who suddenly got up and ran out of the classroom. He didn't react. I haven't finished speaking yet, where are you going? I'll find him. What? Song Si still maintained the posture of holding the milk, hey, I won't drink it now. A taxi is running on the spacious road. Zhang Ziyi panted heavily and patted Sen Ning, who was sitting next to him. I said, why are you running so fast? I almost missed you. Sen Ning didn't say a word, she stared at the front closely, her hands clasped together. Zhang Ziyi was silent. Hey, shall we run back and run into them now? Yes. Sen Ning sunk her eyes, repeating as if comforting herself, yes. Zhang Ziyi lowered his head dejectedly. Tang Zheng said that he would have no time to go home after he entered, and scoffed if so, how good would they be to take a normal school like Xin Zequan, at least it can be common, you think it is Ning Ning. That's the way he decided long ago, and he won't change it. It's just that she is not ready yet, really not ready. The car stopped at the gate of the compound. Sen Ning and Zhang Ziyi rushed forward after getting off the car, crossing the boulevard, and then through the training clearing. A car passed by. Sen Ning stopped abruptly and turned to look at the familiar car. Ning Ning. Zhang Ziyi stopped suspiciously, then followed her gaze to the car that stopped slowly not far away. It's him. Sen Ning's heart jumped and she raised her foot and walked there. She walked faster and faster, but stopped again when the car door opened. She looked at the opened car door and at the people coming down from it. Her vision was a bit blurred, she blinked and forced away the water vapor in her eyes, so that she could see the person again. He was still like that, his brows were light and sharp. At this moment, he stood long by the door, and said in surprise, I almost thought I was wrong. Aren't you in class? Why are you here? We skipped class. Zhang Ziyi asked without seeing his words and deeds, frowning suddenly, where is Tang Zheng? Words and deeds, I don't know, maybe it's set off. What? Zhang Ziyi turned around and ran, I'll go to his house to see. Zhang Ziyi left, only the two of them were left outside the car. He looked at Sen Ning again in his words and deeds, and said dissatisfied, are you guys fat? You skip class. Sen Ning did not answer his question for the first time, but stepped forward and asked, are you going to leave? Temporary notice. Then, when will you come back? Words and deeds, I don't know, I probably won't be back for a long time. A thin layer of sweat broke out on Sen Ning's forehead in the scorching sun, and his long time exploded like deadly ammunition in her ears. While she told herself to calm down, after all, she had known it, but on the other side she knew it again. I couldn't calm down, so I could only stand at a loss, letting his face turn pale. Don't skip class next time. His words and deeds frowned. It's hot, right? Go home. He didn't understand her panic, let alone her reluctance. In his eyes, she was just a pretty well-behaved little sister who lived in his house. Sen Ning lowered her head and slowly said, I heard that you are going to leave suddenly, so I just want to send you off. The words and deeds were stunned, and then he smiled, this can't be a reason, but Sen Ning, let's not take it as an example. Words and deeds stepped forward, if you don't have me in the future, you should ask the teacher if you have any questions you don't understand. He still missed her. Good. If you are bullied, remember to say something and tell your family about something. Will those people bully her when he is away? Good. People are smart, you are really easy to be deceived like this. Why does he always treat her so well? And also before he finished speaking, he was suddenly hugged by words and deeds. The hug was very tight, and the two thin small bracelets were on his waist, almost holding a smell of life and death. The words and deeds were rare for a while, and what to do next turned out to be blank. Slowly lowering his eyes, he looked at the little girl who was much shorter than him. He has always been indifferent, but this uncomfortable nerve has softened a bit. After hesitating his words and deeds, he stretched out his hand and patted Sen Ning's back. Why, afraid? Sen Ning returned to her mind. She was so scared that she was so indifferent to hug him, but she was reluctant to let go, so she whispered in the embarrassment of letting go or not, I'm not afraid, I'm not a kid. Baby. He smiled with words and deeds, coaxing, yes, you are not a kid anymore. The girl in the cardamom age and the boy who happened to be an adult were both very young that year. Brother Xingzi, Then, goodbye. Goodbye. Family, love, friendship, a goodbye does not mean separation. So, don't worry about everything. Feelings will always follow, and it will emerge from the cocoon at the moment you are defenseless.